6 days ago, Alexandra Eala was holding a trophy that nobody from the Philippines had ever held. Sunday night in Toronto, in front of the loudest crowd of the entire tournament, she won 4 games. 4. The whole thing took 73 minutes. 6-4, 6-love. And here is the part that does not sit right. The woman who did that to her, Belinda Bencic, had been standing on that same court the day before for 3 hours and 24 minutes, a war with Taylor Townsend that went the distance and finished so late that half the stadium had already gone home. She should have been empty. She should have been slow. So how does the most tired player in the building make an entire stadium go silent in 73 minutes? Because that is what this actually was. All week, the Filipino army had turned Sobeys Stadium into something closer to a football match than a tennis tournament. Flags in every section, chants between serves. After Eala survived Katie McNally on Friday night, she told the crowd she heard somebody in the stands say they wanted to be Filipino for the night. That crowd was not decoration. That crowd was a weapon, and every single preview said the same thing about the woman across the net. Bencic does not like noise. So Bencic got the noise. And then, somewhere in the second set, it stopped. Not because anybody gave up on her. Not because anybody left. Sit with the strange version of it for a second. A stadium full of people who came specifically to scream, holding their breath instead, staring at a scoreboard that read 6-love, quietly wondering what they were even watching. Everybody had a theory within the hour. The ankle, the schedule, the step up in level. I have gone through all 3, and I am telling you right now, not one of them survives contact with the scoreboard. What actually happened is smaller than any of that. And it is worse. It is one number from Sunday night, sitting next to one number from the Washington final 6 days earlier. Put them side by side, and the entire match explains itself in about 4 seconds. Nobody has put them side by side yet. But before that number means anything to you, you need to understand what the 7 days before Sunday looked like. Because this was not a good week getting interrupted. This was something her whole country had been waiting 20 years for. She is 21 years old. Left-handed, she started hitting balls at 4, turned pro at 15, and grew up 8,000 miles from home inside the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca because there was no path to the top of world tennis that started and ended in Manila. For most of her career, that was the whole story. Promising Filipina. Interesting prospect. Nice narrative for the commentators to read off a card during a first-round loss. Then came Washington. She arrived at the Mubadala DC Open ranked outside the top 25. Over 5 matches, she beat Zheng Qinwen, the reigning Olympic champion. She beat Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion of the tournament. She beat Elina Svitolina, the 2nd seed. She beat Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam winner, in the semi-final. And in the final, she got Jessica Pegula, the top seed, world number 3. Now watch how that final actually went, because this matters later. Eala lost the first set 6-4. Then the sky opened. Lightning, heavy rain, match suspended overnight with Pegula ahead and cruising. Eala went to bed a set and a breakdown in the biggest match of her life. She said afterward she warmed up 1,000 times that weekend. They came back Monday at noon. She was still behind, 4-6 and 4-3 down. She won the last 9 games of the match, 9 straight, 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. First player from the Philippines, ever, in the history of the sport, to win a WTA Tour title. 110 million people back home woke up to it. In Washington, the ticket office said that in the weeks before the tournament, basically every ticket request that came in was about one player. That was August 3rd. By August 5th, she was in Toronto, and the ranking had moved to number 20 inches the world. Career high, top 20 for the first time. And she was not done, because she beat Alicia Parks in 3 sets, and then she beat Katie McNally 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 inches, a match that took 2 hours and 39 minutes, and included a medical timeout after she landed badly on her right foot, in the second set and needed the ankle strapped. 3 matches in Toronto, 3 deciding sets, 7 wins in a row going back to Washington, and the 8th was sitting right there. Here is what makes Sunday night hurt in a way a normal 4th-round loss does not. The draw had blown wide open in front of her. Aryna Sabalenka, world number 1, top seed, lost to Ekaterina Alexandrova in 3 sets. Jessica Pegula, the player Eala had just beaten in Washington, lost 6-3, 6-3 to Diana Schneider. Both of them went out in the same round Eala was about to play. The path to a WTA 1000 semifinal, maybe further, had just had 2 of its biggest obstacles removed by somebody else. She was the story of the summer. She was the story of the tournament. She had a confirmed spot at the US Open waiting for her in 3 weeks. And for the first time in her entire career, she walked onto a court not as the underdog everybody roots for, but as the player everybody was watching. And I want to say something here, because if you are still with me at this point, you are probably the kind of person who does not want a comfort video. There are already 50 of those. What I am about to show you is not going to make you feel better in the first 2 minutes. It made me sit there and rewatch a second set I did not enjoy watching once. So if you want the real answer, and not the polite one, stay with me all the way through, because the piece that explains everything does not show up until the second half. Drop a comment right now telling me where you watched this match from and what time it was where you live, because I am genuinely curious how many of you set an alarm for this one. Everything was set up. Then the first set produced 5 service breaks, which should have looked like chaos. It was not chaos. It was a pattern. So let us go through it properly, because within an hour of that scoreline going up, 3 explanations were everywhere. And I want to take all 3 apart before I give you anything. Start with the first set, because almost nobody actually watched it. They just saw the final score and filled in the rest. Eala won the toss and chose to serve. Bencic broke her in the third game to lead 2-1. The stadium got tight. And then Eala broke straight back, 2-2. And the noise that came out of that place was the loudest moment of the night. A few games later, she was down 3-4, and she served an ace to hold. She was not being blown off the court. She was trading punches with a former world number 4, and she was landing some. That first set had 5 service breaks in it. 5. 2 of them belonged to Alexandra Eala. Bencic took it 6-4. And if you turned the television off there, you would have said this is a good match between a young player on a heater and a veteran who knows what she is doing. Nothing about it looked like a collapse. So here is the first question. If she could break the serve of Belinda Bencic twice in one set, what changed so completely that the next set was 6-0? Second explanation. Fatigue. This is the one everybody reached for first, and I understand why. 3 matches in Toronto, 3 deciding sets, 7 wins in a row, a rain-delayed final in Washington that dragged across 2 days, except run the numbers on the other side of the net. The night before, Belinda Bencic played Taylor Townsend for 3 hours and 24 minutes, 2 tiebreaks. She lost the first set in a breaker after Townsend saved set points, won the second in a breaker, and then had to break serve twice in the third to get out of it. She finished so late that Eala had already gone home. Then Eala got Saturday completely off, a full day of rest and recovery on a strapped ankle, while her opponent was icing everything she owns. Sunday night, the player who had spent 3 hours and 24 minutes on court beat the rested player in 73 minutes. So the tired one won faster, which means fatigue is not the answer, which leaves the question sitting there getting louder. Then what is? Third explanation. The ankle. She rolled her right foot in the second set against McNally. She landed badly coming out of a forehand return, called the trainer, got it taped, and everybody watching held their breath. Then she went out and won the third set 6-4. She hit 36 winners in that match. She was the more aggressive player on court from a strapped ankle against an opponent who was healthy. But forget the highlight reel for a second and think about what an ankle actually does to a tennis player. It takes away lateral movement, change of direction, the ability to get to the wide ball and turn defense into neutral. If the ankle is the story on Sunday night, the first thing you should see collapse is her return game and her defense. That is not what happened. Look at where the match actually fell apart. She was broken 6 times in 8 service games. 6. She faced 10 breakpoints and saved 4. And now here is the detail that ruined the whole thing for me, because this is the moment I realized none of us were looking at the right number. Her serve was working fine. She put 58.3% of her first serves in the box, 28 out of 48. That is a completely normal night. Against McNally 2 days earlier, she was at 70%, and she is a player who lives in that range. She hit 3 double faults in the entire match. 3. In 2 sets. Under that noise, in that pressure, in the biggest match of her life to that point, that is not a serve breaking down. Nothing about those numbers looks like a player who is nervous, or hurt, or spraying it. The serve went in. It just stopped mattering, because behind those first serves, the ones that landed exactly where they were supposed to land, she won 46.4% of the points. 13 out of 28. She was losing more than half the points she started with the biggest advantage in tennis. Sit with how strange that is. The shot was healthy, the mechanics were healthy, the double fault count says the head was healthy, and the result was 6 breaks in 8 games and a second set where she did not win a single one. So the ankle does not explain it. The fatigue does not explain it. The gap in level does not explain it either, because she had beaten better players than Belinda Bencic 4 times in the previous 9 days. Every normal explanation is gone, and what is left is a player whose serve was landing and doing absolutely nothing in front of 12,000 people who came to scream and had nothing to scream at. Which leaves one uncomfortable possibility, that Belinda Bencic was never really playing against Alexandra Eala at all. She was playing against something else in that building. Here is the thing nobody said out loud after that match. Belinda Bencic never once acknowledged the crowd. She did not stare them down. She did not put a finger to her lips. She did not do the thing every preview said she would do, which was get rattled and start arguing with the umpire about noise between first and second serves. All week the story had been written for her. The Swiss veteran who prefers quiet, the player who has visibly lost her temper before when a stadium turned against her. Filipino media wrote it, the neutral press wrote it, and honestly I wrote it in my head too. Eala feeds on the roar. Bencic needs silence. Whoever wins that psychological war wins the match. That war never took place. Because a crowd is not a wall of noise. A crowd is a rhythm. And a rhythm needs long rallies to breathe. Think about what actually makes a tennis stadium erupt. It is never the ace. The ace gets a clap. What makes 12,000 people stand up is the 12-shot exchange where somebody gets pulled off the court, throws up a defensive ball, sprints back, and somehow wins the point. It is the third break point of a 9-minute game. It is the rally that lasts long enough for a stadium to realize, together, that something is happening. Take a breath, and let it out at the same time. Noise needs time. Every single one of those moments needs the point to last. Belinda Bencic did not build a wall against the wave. She drained the water out of the pool. Her entire game is built on taking the ball early. She stands right up on the baseline. She takes it on the rise, she redirects pace instead of generating it, and she ends exchanges 2 shots before a normal player would. She has been doing it for over a decade on hard courts, and she is one of the smartest players on tour at it. Against a big serving opponent, that style is a defensive tool. Against Alexandra Eala on Sunday night, it was a scalpel, and it went straight for the one shot the entire evening was built on. Look at what she did to that serve. Eala hit her first serve. It landed, and Bencic won 53.6% of those points, 15 out of 28. Read that again slowly. On the first serve of Alexandra Eala, the biggest weapon she owns, the shot that had carried her past Osaka and Svitolina and Pegula 9 days earlier, the returner won the majority of the points. Not the server, the returner. That is what makes a stadium go quiet. And here is the mechanism, because this is the part I find genuinely brilliant and genuinely brutal. When your first serve gets taken early and sent straight back at your feet, three things die at once. The free point dies, the short second shot dies, and the rally dies because you are never in front in the exchange. You are always one step behind trying to survive it, and points that start behind end fast. So the points got short, then the games got short, then the sets got short. 73 minutes for a match between the number 12 seed and a player ranked 20 inches the world. And the Filipino army did not go quiet because they gave up on her. They did not leave. They went quiet because nobody handed them a single moment worth making noise about. There were no long rallies. There were no 8-minute service games. There was no comeback to lean into. The stadium was full of people holding a breath they never got to release. The title of every article about that match said Bencic silenced the crowd. That is not what happened. Bencic silenced the serve, and the crowd was collateral damage. And I want to know what you think about that, because this is the part I keep going back and forth on. Did Bencic actually plan this? Or did her natural game just happen to be the exact thing that dismantles a player riding on emotion? Tell me in the comments. Seriously, because I have read every match report from that night and not one of them frames it this way, and I would rather argue about it with you than agree with them. Now, if all of that sounds like a nice theory, I would not blame you. So let me show you two numbers, 6 days apart, that turn it into something else entirely. Washington, August 3rd. The final of the Mubadala DC Open against Jessica Pegula, the world number 3, a player with 11 career titles. Behind her first serve that day, Alexandra Eala won 84.4% of the points, 38 out of 45. Toronto, August 9th. 6 days later, same summer, same surface, same continent, same racket, 46.4%. 13 out of 28. That is a 38-point swing in 6 days. In a player who is not injured in any way that shows up in her movement, who is putting a normal number of first serves in the box, who hit 3 double faults in an entire match. Nothing about Alexandra Eala changed between those two matches. What changed was the person standing on the other side of the net and what that person chose to do with the ball. That is not a collapse. Collapses look different. Collapses come with double faults and shanked forehands and a player screaming at her box. This was clean, and that is what makes it so cold. Second piece of evidence. And this one is my favorite, because it tells you the whole thing was deliberate. Look at how long these matches lasted. Alexandra Eala against Katie McNally, 2 days earlier, 2 hours and 39 minutes. Belinda Bencic against Taylor Townsend, the night before, 3 hours and 24 minutes. Those are the two players who walked onto center court on Sunday night, and between them they had just spent over 6 hours grinding out 3-set marathons. Then they played each other for 73 minutes. The player with the least left in the tank chose the version of tennis that costs the least energy. Shorten every point. Take every ball early. Refuse to run. That is a survival plan for a body that has nothing left, and it is the exact same plan that empties a stadium of noise. She did not have to choose between saving her legs and quieting the crowd. It was one decision that did both. The most efficient thing she could possibly have done was also the most devastating thing she could possibly have done. Third piece. The pressure only ever went one direction. Eala faced 10 breakpoints. Bencic faced 4. Eala was broken 6 times in 8 service games, and in the entire second set, 6 games, she did not break serve once. She did not hold serve once either. 24 minutes of tennis where the scoreboard never moved in her direction at all. That is not a close match decided by a couple of big points. That is one player playing her game and the other player never being allowed to play hers. Now, take all of that back to the beginning, to the question we started with, and watch it close. We asked what Bencic took away that left 12,000 people with nothing to cheer for. Here is the answer, and it has been sitting in the box score the whole time. She took away the free point. Once the first serve stopped producing anything, every rally started with Eala on the back foot. Every point ended in 4 shots, and a crowd that had spent a week roaring at 3-set epics found itself watching a match that was over before it had time to become anything. And here is the piece I have not seen a single channel mention, so if you have stayed this long, this one is yours. Go back and look at how that 7-match winning streak was actually built. 9 straight games to win the title in Washington after being a set and a breakdown. 3 consecutive 3-set matches in Toronto, one of them from a strapped ankle. Every single win in that run came from a match that lasted long enough for her to find something in it. That is a momentum machine. It is genuinely one of the great things about watching her play. But a momentum machine needs runway. Belinda Bencic is the first opponent in that entire streak who did not give her one. She did not beat the best version of Alexandra Eala. She made sure the best version never had time to arrive. So no, this was not a collapse. This was a diagnosis, written out in public 3 weeks before the US Open. So here is the answer to the question we started with. Belinda Bencic did not silence the Filipino army. She silenced one serve, and the army followed it down. And I know that sounds harsh, but I want you to understand why I think it is the most encouraging thing that happened to Alexandra Eala all summer. An emotional problem is unfixable. If the story on Sunday night had been that she was overwhelmed, that the moment got too big, that she cannot handle being the hunted instead of the hunter, then there is nothing to work on. You just hope she grows out of it. A serve problem is a Tuesday afternoon on a practice court. More depth on the first serve. More variation so a returner cannot camp on one spot. Better shape on the +1 so the third ball is not a defensive scramble. That is fixable. And she has a coaching team and about 20 days to fix it, and a confirmed place in the main draw in New York waiting at the end of them. And keep this in view because it is easy to lose it on a night like Sunday. She is 21 years old. She has 7 top 10 wins in 2026, which puts her level with Elena Rybakina and Elina Svitolina for the season. She is the first player from her country to ever win a WTA Tour title, and she is ranked number 20 inches the world, which is the highest a Filipina has ever been ranked in the history of the sport. Belinda Bencic did not take any of that away from her. She just handed her a report card nobody asked for. But here is the thing that keeps me up about it, and it is why I cannot call Sunday night a footnote. That match was not played in private. Every coach on the WTA Tour was watching, or has watched it since. Belinda Bencic did not just win a 4th round. She published a blueprint for free, in 73 minutes, with the whole sport looking on. Stand on the baseline. Take the first serve early. Refuse to let the point breathe. Give the crowd nothing. In 3 weeks, Alexandra Eala walks into Flushing Meadows, where the crowd will be 5 times the size of Toronto, where the Filipino community in New York has been waiting for this for 20 years, and where the draw is full of players who return exactly the way Bencic returns. So which one shows up? The serve that won 84% of its points against the world number 3? Or the blueprint? I do not know. I have watched that second set 4 times, and I still cannot decide whether Toronto was a warning or a gift. But I am going to be here breaking down every single match she plays in New York, point by point, the same way we just did this one. So if you want the real answer to that question instead of the polite version, subscribe and stay with me, because the first test comes in about 20 days, and I would hate for you to miss the moment we find out.